Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is training, and we're going to be discussing programming structure concepts for the goal of both strength and mass. So what that means is people who want to get stronger and they also want to get bigger, and this would be for people who also want to do muscular shaping. So even if you don't want to get bigger muscles, this is still a good programming structure for you if you're looking to have an aesthetic physique in regards to also having muscular shape. So what really dictates whether you're going to grow from your training or not, it does have to do with how you train to some degree, but it also is equally as important into how you eat. So if you train like what I'm about to explain in this podcast, it will help you if you train this way and you kind of eat at maintenance level calories, then it'll help you kind of shape and equal out your musculature. If you eat in a caloric surplus, it'll help you build your muscle. So sometimes if somebody's brand new to this style of training, the muscles will actually still grow because of just the crazy demand, but that wears out pretty quick. So often, sometimes what people say is like, "Oh, when I did powerlifting, I got bigger." Um, Not really. Like if you don't have caloric surplus, you can't get bigger muscles. So it's kind of like I can have all the workers in the world, but if I don't have bricks, I can't build a house. So although somebody feels like they get heavy from training, it would actually be related to your nutrition, not your training. So we've talked about that in the past, but I figured I want to touch on that real quick. So if you listen to the intro of this and you're like, oh, I don't want to be a bodybuilder, I don't want to get bigger muscles, don't worry, you can still listen to this. And if you're a bodybuilder and you want to get bigger muscles, you can still listen to this. So, but what this is a lot for people who want to focus on strength as much as they want to focus on size, if not maybe prioritizing strength above that, okay, above size. And then we're going to come back and we're going to make a podcast related to similar topics of what I'll be discussing today, but when we have size and shape as more of the primary focus over strength. So today's is strength is absolutely what you want, and you might want size with it, or you might not. So that's what we're going to talk about. So now that I'm already like 3 minutes into it, what I wanted to do real quick was just to say that I mentioned this in the last two podcasts, we're playing around with a new microphone. So I would love, 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 love feedback if you guys think that this is an improvement in sound quality. So our email is brutalirongym@gmail.com. So if you've listened to our podcast in the past and you feel that this microphone is helping the quality of the podcast, please let me know. So we have a patron program through Podbean where people can donate money to the podcast, and it helps cover the hosting costs and odds and ends and stuff like that. But that I didn't even know existed until I started a podcast, and then was like, oh crap. But one of the things I've been using the money for is to save up for things like this microphone. So I want to try to make sure the podcast, not only the content within it, but maybe the presentation of it is good. Just want everything to be as good quality as I can. And since people were so awesome to donate money towards the podcast, I wanted to make sure that the people of the podcast got the benefit from the donations. So thank you to those who signed up for the patron program. I sincerely appreciate it. And thank you for helping us pay for this microphone. And if you have any opinion on this microphone, good or bad, please let us know at brutalirongym@gmail.com. Okay, so now we're into it, but I just like mentioning that because I want people to kind of, I don't know, if you donated money, I want you to know that it's appreciated and that it's coming back to help you. So thank you very much. Okay, um, basically what we're going to talk about, like we said today, was how to set up and just some concepts of setting up programming and cycling variables for the exercises and whatnot of a program that's strength focused with some muscle building and muscle shaping included. So in podcast 387, just 4 podcasts ago, we talked about how to have both creativity and consistency in training. And we talked about just how often you can change up exercises and in the ability of changing them up, it allows you to feel creative and get to learn new things. But if you're always changing everything, how do you know you're moving forward? So you had to have some consistency in the training as well. So that podcast was really kind of fun to just kind of give some variables to how much in your training can be how much of your training can be variable, and allow you to just have fun and do whatever you feel like doing that day, versus having enough consistency to be productive. So what we're going to talk about today is basically how, like, some thought processes behind when should you change up exercises, why should you change them up, and stuff like that. So the general components of a workout, when you're thinking of a singular workout within a program designed for strength primarily and size and shape as a secondary goal, the first thing you would do in the workout is movement prep. And this includes kind of movement restoration, meaning if you come in and your hamstrings are tight, you want to address that. You want to get your hamstrings loose. If you come in and your shoulders a little bit wonky and just kind of feeling weird that day and you have to bench press, well, address the wonkiness. Okay, so that would be movement restoration, is you're just trying to restore good quality movement. So that's the first thing you would address in your movement prep. The next thing you want to address is prehab and rehab. So if I have a chronic issue or something that I'm trying to work around, I want to address that. So maybe I have a patella tendonitis and I really wanted to squat today, but I know that that's an issue for me. I want to do some TKEs, maybe do some muscle treatments to loosen up the musculature of that area. So we do scraping, almost like Graston style work. So you just kind of do any kind of prehab, rehab, anything that's going to allow you to address an acute injury or an acute annoyance. And acute just means it's like short-term, temporary kind of things. If you have chronic issues, like where your knees hurt for 6 months, clearly whatever the hell you're doing isn't working because it still hurts for 6 months. So you have to really take a better look at your programming and exercise selection and stuff like that. But if it's just a small little annoying thing, maybe you slept on your elbow funny and it's just kind of clicking that day, you just do some extra, like really high rep, lightweight tricep press downs, and that gets some blood flow into the elbow and that gets rid of the click. So basically it's prehab, rehab after you get established good quality movement for the day. The next thing in your movement prep is some type of weakness focus. So if I have, say like weak glutes, I would want to include glutes in my warm up on a squat and deadlift day. If on bench press, let's say that you have weak shoulder stabilization, maybe you'll add in things like handstand. There's variations of handstand push-ups where your feet stay on the ground. So like a pike push-up, for example. You might also do various plank positions, just things in which you're using your shoulders and upper back to stabilize and brace positioning. So that would be something that would work on shoulder stability, for example. Then you would actually have a general style warm-up included to where you get the joints and the muscles of the day going. So within your movement prep, and there are more things that can sometimes be included in movement prep, so I'm trying not to be overwhelming, but I'm also trying to be thorough. So you have movement restoration, making sure you can move well for the day. You have prehab, rehab, making sure any kind of small annoyances are addressed. You have weakness focus, making sure that if you know there's a known physical or mental cue weakness in the main lift, you want to make sure that's warmed up and woke up before you get to the main lift. And then you have a general overall warm up. So if it's lower body, I want to make sure I get some blood in my hips, knees, ankles, get some movement in my calf muscles, get some movement in my hamstrings, my quads, my glutes. You can even do some stuff that warms up core bracing. If you're going to be bracing for a squat and a deadlift, it's good to have your core be awake and ready. So a lot of these things can actually be kind of combined. So often if my clients, they'll have like one little circuit that they go through that actually combines all of this stuff. Or sometimes you have to separate it out depending on what their issues are. So it sounds like there's a lot in there, but it actually can be summed up in like a 3 exercise circuit once you know how to layer things and kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So that's the first thing we do is movement prep in the workout. The next thing is strength. So that's your strength movement for the day. So squat, bench, deadlift. Maybe if you work out 4 times a week, you maybe do a bench assistance type day. So sometimes people do like a West Side method and they'll do like dynamic effort and do explosive style work. And I'd argue whether that's even useful sometimes. at certain strength levels. And then sometimes people will throw in like overhead press instead. So Wendler's 531 does that. So you'll have like squat, bench, deadlift, overhead press. Some people do squat, bench, deadlift, bench. So it just kind of depends on what you want to do with that secondary pressing day. So I've even had people before, they'll do squat, bench, deadlift, and then like an upper body kind of bodybuilding day where they do some little bit of chest, a little bit of upper back, a little bit of shoulders, biceps, tris. So we actually throw in like a more of an aesthetic based fourth day. So again, it kind of depends on the client's goals and desires, depends on what we do in that fourth day. So I actually just wrote a program for an online client, like a 16-week program for strongman. So we actually used a deadlift variation, like deadlift medley day. They had another day week devoted to Atlas stones and like squat variations. They had an overhead press day where we used like logs. And then they had another overhead press day where we did circus dumbbells and some other odds and ends. So it's really kind of fun. Once you understand these structures, you can plug and play any kind of movements you want based on the concepts. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is how to identify the concepts and plug and play what you want. So then you have accessories for strength. So we have our movement prep, we have strength movement, so squat, bench, deadlift. Then you have your accessories for your strength. So things that you think are specific to strengthening a concept of the main lift. So if you think in your deadlift you need to strengthen your mid range, you might pick like an RDL movement. So that would be technically an accessory for strength. You're not actually trying to grow the muscles of the that are involved in the RDL. You're trying to strengthen them. So if you have an accessory for strength, that's usually a main lift variation specific to strengthening that concept of the main lift, versus accessories for mass, where you're just trying to get the individual muscles of that main lift kind of growing that day. So, for example, when you think of accessories after, say, squats, is you might say, okay, I have a stabilizing bracing issue. After squats, let me work on good mornings. Well, that's an accessory for strength. Then you're going to say, okay, well, I need to grow my quadriceps, hamstrings, and glutes. Well, those are accessories for mass. So you can separate your accessories out into strength accessories and mass accessories. And it's very, very, very actually important that you do so, because the way in which you would progress those exercises is extremely different whether you're going for strength or mass, because strength or mass will dictate different time intertensions, and they dictate different progression goals, whether you're going for a progression of more weight or progression of more volume. By understanding that you can get accessories for mass to progress in volume, it actually allows you to lessen wear and tear on joints after you've already done strength, the movement, and accessories for strength. So it actually helps you prolong your longevity and increase your health in your programming by understanding that not all exercises need to progress in heaviness. So if I want to get bigger muscles, if I progress within the correct time under tension, but I progress in reps performed, I will get the growth and not have to worry about excess weight increases on top of my regular weight increase stressed movements. So that way I don't really kill my joints. So it's super helpful to identify accessories for strength versus accessories for mass, and not everybody does that. So we're looking at movement prep, strength, so your strength movement for the day, the main movement of the day. Then you have accessories for strength and accessories for mass, and that's also the order in which you would do them, by the way. So those are our components. So what do I do for my clients? So I have online clients and I have in-person clients. And an example of how we set up programming, okay, that is common amongst most of my clients. And the reason why I want to tell you what I do with my clients is because it's what I think would work best for you guys. So I'll explain here later on like how you can apply this yourself without having me do it. So, but generally what we do is we set everything up on a 4-week wave, meaning that they're going to do kind of the same type of movement prep stuff for 4 weeks. They're going to do the same strength movement for 4 weeks, the same accessories for strength for 4 weeks, and the same accessories for mass for 4 weeks. So why 4 weeks? Well, it does fit into a monthly calendar, so that's just one truth of it. So also we find that 4 weeks is consistent enough to learn the form of the movements. So the first time you perform a movement, you're doing the motions, but you don't really understand what the hell's going on. Your body's still really new to it, so it's finding balance points, it's finding muscle firing patterns. The efficiency of the movement in terms of maximizing your intensity of it, which in turn would maximize your progression from it. So your body's response to it, that is going to be low on the first time you do it. Not zero, but it's not going to be, 100% perfect. So the first time you do anything, you're not going to get the maximal result from it. The second time, you're going to start to kind of, okay, yeah, now I'm getting this. I'm feeling better with this. Then the third time, boom, you pretty much got it. You're doing really well. The fourth time, you come in, you know it really well again, and it's like, oh crap, like this was kind of hard to improve. So from the first to second week, it was easy to improve because I didn't know what the hell I was doing the first week. The second to third week, it was a little bit harder to improve because I finally started figuring it out by the third week. Then the third to fourth week is really hard to improve because you kind of already knew it the previous week. So trying to find 5 extra pounds here, an extra rep there, it gets harder as you continue to do that. So by the fourth week, like the progression of jump from 3 to 4 was small, and it's going to be high intensity. So what it allows us to do is there was consistency enough within the 4 weeks for them to learn the form and make progressions. But if you continue to go past 4 weeks, it gets harder and harder to make the progressions, and you're more likely to concede on technique than you actually are to get physically stronger or technically stronger. So we just kind of cut it at 4 weeks and give them a new one. Then also, so that basically that's consistency enough to learn form, maximize intensity, and be certain of progressions. So if I'm changing every week, I don't know if I'm really progressing on something. So I have to have some consistency to be certain of progression. And then, like we said, only 4 weeks because after that, it gets harder and harder to make progressions accurately and correctly. And then also, it gets kind of boring. So people will get bored if they have to stay with stuff too long. So I find 4 weeks is enough that they feel like they had 4 weeks to master it, but then they're ready to move on. And after 4 weeks, also, the body starts to adapt to avoid progressions. So if I think of this, for example, if I go out and I run a mile today, I'm not a runner, by the way, so I always use it as this example because it's something that's miserable to me. So if I go out and I run a mile, it's going to be awful. If I run a mile the second time, still awful. Run a mile the third time, okay, it's still awful, but I'm starting to expect the awfulness. Then the fourth time, still awful, but I fully expect now what's going on. So you can see how the body starts to adapt if you continue to do the same thing over and over. However, let's say the first time I go out and I run a mile straight through, just try to keep a constant pace the whole time. The next time I run a mile, but I do, say, 1 minute sprints, 1 minute walks, 1 minute sprints, 1 minute walks, and that gets me a mile. The next time, maybe I do 30-second sprints and 30-second walks. And then maybe the next time I do a 2 minute sprint, maybe only 30-second walk, 2 minute sprint, 30-second walk. But if I have variability to the thing that I'm doing consistently, it'll make longer and longer time before the body can adapt to it. So if I keep the same goal, okay, of 1 mile, but I keep the exact same style of doing it, my body adapts very quickly. Our bodies are built to adapt. That's a good thing, by the way. Helps us survive over time. But if I vary the way in which I execute that concept, it becomes harder for my body to adapt and predict. So therefore, I get more and more results. And what I kind of mean by this is, if I was running variable sprint times, every time I went out, I ran a mile. I accomplished a mile. But it would feel like it freshly kicked my ass every time, and therefore I will get a bigger body response. If your body feels like, oh, this again, it doesn't get a very strong response. If it feels like something is fresh and new, then it doesn't know how to protect itself, and you get a big response from it. So, for example, if I have clients who have, say, weak hamstrings, and they're really lower back dominant in their deadlift. So let's go with conventional deadlift. We'll say they're lower back dominant, they have no butt and they have no hamstrings. Well, I know their glutes and hamstrings are important, but if I have them do, say, let's just say stiff leg deadlifts. Okay, deficit stiff leg deadlifts as a way to build up their hamstrings. If I just have them do that exact variation and I want to do it long enough until their hamstrings adapt, that can take freaking 16, 20 weeks. Meaning, like, how long do I have to focus on my hamstrings for them to technically get strong enough to, like, maybe balance out their lower back? That could actually take a year. That could take 2 years. It could take a very long time to try to balance out the hamstrings to the lower back, depending on how imbalanced the person is. If I do the exact same exercise for a year, that's going to be pretty damn stupid. That's going to be boring as hell. It's going to be hard to make any kind of progressions. So instead, what I might do is maybe 1 month, okay, 1 4-week unit cycle, I might have them do barbell stiff leg deadlifts from a deficit. Maybe the next cycle I have them do dumbbell stiff leg deadlifts. Maybe the next cycle we do an RDL variation from the floor. Maybe the next cycle we do inverse curl from Westside Barbell Machine, like their machine, their inverse curl machine. So like that's the idea of it is I'm changing the stimulus of hamstring work. So that I know I need hamstring work for maybe a year straight, but I have to change the stimulus style so I can continue to get the best response. So that would be like if I was running a mile at various sprint times. I'm going to get more and more responses, even though it's a mile every time. The way in which I do it is different. I'm going to get a bigger response. So that's why we want to cycle things out, is you get bigger responses when you cycle things out. Because your body, it can't predict everything. Everything feels fresh and new, but there's the 4-week consistency enough to learn the form. So by switching every 4 weeks, it gives you enough consistency to make progression, but not so much consistency and boredom that you don't make progression. So that's the idea behind it. So in a sense, you can see that if I think of the one accessory as a category, okay, that this thing is this exercise here is to address hamstrings. Then I know that that's my category and I can just switch out any exercises I want based on that category. So that is actually how I train myself, is conceptual training. So for my online clients, I know what their categories are, I assign them, and then every month I just plug in whatever variable, like whatever exercise within that category seems like it would work best for their body type and their movement mechanics. So everybody's a little bit different, so the same hamstring work exercise isn't going to work the same for everybody. So not everybody responds to RDLs the same as everybody else. So some people RDLs is appropriate, some people stiff leg deadlifts is appropriate, some people I gotta do weird, stupid, crazy stuff because their body's super stubborn. So everybody's a little bit different. So for everybody I work with, we have a conceptual program, meaning I know what the categories are, even if they don't, and then I plug and play what exercises are best for them per month. Well, for myself, I do the same thing. I have conceptual programs. So I have the categories written in, but I actually create variability sooner than 4 weeks, and sometimes I leave things in longer. So sometimes for movement prep, like currently I've been working on banded marches on our belt squat, and I've been throwing those in, like 4 or 5 times, 6 times a week now, just trying to really figure out what the response is, how my hips feel with it. So I've been using that like every single day as my kind of general body warm up, because it makes you sweat, makes you out of breath. So even on bench days, it gets the excitability of your nervous system up, which is the point of one aspect of warm ups is excitability of your nervous system. So I've been using it for that for every single workout. And maybe I'll use it for, 2 weeks and then find out that I don't like it anymore. I might like it and then keep it for freaking like 16 weeks. So I do conceptual program for myself, the same I do with my clients, but I have more personal variability because I kind of have the knowledge to be able to do so. So then maybe for my strength movements, if I want to work on like reverse band bench pressing, which helps me address my old injuries in my shoulders, I might keep that. I've had reverse band benching as one of my main movements at least once, if not twice a month, for probably 8 months, 9 months now. So, because it works very well for me and addresses my old injuries. And then maybe other accessories, like if I want to work on chest growth, I might do a different chest exercise every single week. Maybe 1 week it's dumbbell flies, next time it's flies from the floor, one from the bench. Maybe next time I do weird, slow eccentrics on Smith machine incline presses. Maybe the next time I do our chest fly machine. So I might change certain things every single week. I might keep things for months on end. So The benefit of conceptual training, my style, where I change things however, whenever I want, the benefit is it's self directed. I get to pick whatever's best for me that day, and there's a high level of creativity and learning. The downside, like why I don't have clients do that, is that you have to have an extremely high level of exercise knowledge. So if I were to think of all the exercises I know, it'd be several hundreds, if not more than that, because I've been personal training for 17 years. So this is kind of all I do all day. So, like they have that rule of like 10,000 hours makes you an expert. I don't know about the expert part, but I'm way the hell over 10,000 hours, like significantly over. But that's how much experience I have and how much knowledge I have to pull from. So that allows me to do more conceptual style training. So also it's harder to track progressions when you have conceptual style training. So you have to have knowledge with how to do that. So by keeping, say I'm changing chest fly movements every time, how do I track progression? Well, if my chest fly is for growth, I don't have to really track progression in terms of reps and strength. I just have to check progression based on growth. So that's kind of like knowing what to check, when to check, how long does it take for the chest to grow. So maybe I don't need to recheck everything until every 12 weeks because that's an appropriate time frame. Or maybe strength progressions or technique progressions I might check every 4 weeks because that's an appropriate time progression. So kind of like you have to know all that stuff to be able to use that type of programming. And you have to also just be able to be mean and be honest with yourself. So what's the exercise that's best for me versus which exercise do I want to do right now? Those are two very different questions. So for all of my clients, and including myself, I use conceptual training, meaning I just use the categories that are needed best for them, and then I apply what exercises fit that. So for them, they don't know I'm doing that until they listen to this podcast right now. But why don't I give them the power to do it? It's partly because why the hell are they paying me? They're paying me for my knowledge. So they're paying me to tell them what's best rather than just saying, oh, go ahead and experiment and good luck. And that'd be no point in paying me. So they're paying me to do it for them so that way they can get the best progress as fast as possible. And then also they are getting to learn and experience what movements kind of feel best for them, what our structures are, what's the common structure we use. So for example, do they typically do hamstrings before they do quadriceps? Do they do quadriceps at all? So they kind of get to see the way in which they're structured. So what's the best structure or approach for you is going to be starting with a structured program, like having pre-selected options like in terms of categories. So you have to know what your categories are. Then you're going to kind of record exercises you like and dislike based in those categories, and not how you like them, whether you like, it's more so how do they feel with your body. So does that exercise feel like it targets the muscle you want correctly for your body type? So if I'm doing an exercise to work my hamstrings but my lower back is pumped up, it's probably not a good exercise for me. So you have to understand how to target the specific musculature or the specific positioning that you're working on. So that's something you'd record. Then the exercises you performed, you'd felt, okay, which ones was I able to progress well with in strength and or volume? Which ones kind of didn't feel comfortable and I wasn't sure how to progress very well. So maybe I didn't know them well enough to be able to progress with consistency and form. And then progressions of main lifts versus accessories. So like for example, if I wanted my bench to go up, in one 4-week cycle I used weighted dips and my bench went up pretty good or it felt comfortable. Then the next cycle I got away from the dips, I did tricep press downs on a cable machine and found out I didn't respond as well. So you have to start to record that stuff as well. Now that can all get very complicated. So for myself, like I did 10 years of bodybuilding before I got into really like kind of powerlifting based training. And hold on one second, I'm going to switch the video.